Would the United States actually go to war with Iran? And if so, would they use a nuclear weapon? It sounds like a ridiculous question until you realize the war has already started. The nukes are already deployed and no one told you. Documents recently revealed top secret war plans, covert operations, assassinations, bomber runs, and cyber attacks. And private contractors have been warned that just whispering about their assignments could land them in federal prison. All of it already in motion. All of it classified at the highest levels, all of it pointed at Iran. This is as high stakes as it gets, because what if things spiral out of control? What begins over the skies of Iran could ripple across the Arabian Peninsula, the Red Sea, the Mediterranean, the world. It could crash global markets, collapse supply chains, and yes, maybe even bring back the unthinkable. A nuclear strike. This isn't speculation. It's all laid out plain as day in Pentagon documents and statements from the Trump administration. The only question now is, how far are they willing to go? On February 20th, two B-52 bombers took off from a secret US base in Qatar. Their mission: drop bombs on targets in Iraq. US Central Command called it a, quote, routine operation, meant to assure regional partners of US commitments and to deter adversaries. But Iran saw something else. Press TV reported the strike as a direct message, a warning. Even though the bombs landed in Iraq, the choice of aircraft spoke volumes. You see, the B-52 is capable of delivering nuclear payloads, and its presence, Iran argued, was a calculated act of intimidation. Now here's what's strange about this event. If you Google it, you'll find almost nothing from major US media outlets. And that's odd, especially considering how obsessed the media used to be with Trump doing anything even remotely provocative. 2 weeks after the bombing run in Iraq, things escalated on March 3rd. This time, a US B-52 bomber flew over the Mediterranean, flanked by Israeli F-15s, F-35s, and British fighter jets. The operation involved long-range mission simulations and aerial refueling. Clear signs of preparation for extended-range strikes, like one on Iran. This drill barely made a blip in Western media, but in Israel, in likely message to Iran, Israeli and US Air Forces carry out, quote, joint drill with heavy bomber. The drill was possibly aimed at preparing for a joint strike on Iran. Israeli outlets didn't ignore the intent, but the US media did. These weren't routine drills, they were rehearsals for war. Soon after these drills, real airstrikes followed, this time on the leadership of Ansarullah, aka the Houthis in Yemen. No one is pretending the Houthis act alone. They are backed by Iran. And this time, the White House was crystal clear about the target. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz said in a televised interview,
this was an overwhelming response that actually targeted multiple Houthi leaders and took them out. Difference here is, one, going after the Houthi leadership, and two, holding Iran responsible. It is Iran that has repeatedly funded, resourced, trained, and helped the Houthis target not only U.S. warships, but global commerce, and has helped the Houthis shut down two of the world's most strategic sea lanes.
Yes, the Houthis did relaunch their Red Sea blockade in solidarity with Gaza. But according to Waltz, it was a message to Iran. And yet the mainstream media stuck to the Pentagon script, the sanitized version, degrading Houthi capabilities, protecting freedom of navigation. Ken Klippensteins, an independent journalist tracking this story, put it bluntly. I thought the news media would finally get the message, but the coverage instead adhered to the sterile language of the Pentagon, framing the strikes as just another Biden-era operation. He pointed to the New York Times, which described Trump's escalation as, quote, similar to past strikes. But Klippensteins corrected them, quote, Biden never targeted Houthi leadership. Trump has entered uncharted waters. Meanwhile, Trump is making no secret of his intentions. On his platform, Truth Social, he wrote, Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences. Those consequences will be dire. And a month prior, Trump revealed that he had sent Iran a letter. I hope you're going to negotiate, because if we have to go in militarily, it's going to be a terrible thing for them. That's not a veiled message. That is a very clear threat of war. In response, the Irani president Masoud Pezeshkian said, "Do whatever the hell you want." Now, some argue that Trump is simply applying maximum pressure to force a new nuclear deal with Iran. But Klippenstein obtained secret Pentagon contractor documents that reveal something much bigger: a long-term plan, a new war strategy, and even nuclear options. According to Klippenstein, Trump has given Iran a Ukraine-style ultimatum. Either give up your nuclear program within 2 months or face the consequences. "We can't let them have a nuclear weapon," Trump says. "I'd rather have a peace deal than the other option, but the other option will solve the problem." To the casual observer, this might sound like more limited airstrikes, but behind the scenes, the new Iran war preparations include one chilling element: nuclear options. One might find it extraordinary to think that nuclear weapons are even considered, a retired senior military officer told Klippenstein, but we've entered a new era. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Klippenstein writes, "These plans are the result of a reassessment of Iran's capabilities, a fundamental shift in how America fights wars." You see, over the last 40 years, Iran has transformed not into a land army ready to invade its neighbors, but into something just as dangerous. A master of proxy warfare, drone strikes, and long-range missile attacks. In today's world, full-scale wars are simply too costly. So powerful nations usually don't fight directly. They fight through proxies. They let others do the bleeding. Syria is a perfect example. It was a battlefield where Iranis, Turks, Russians, Americans, Israelis, Saudis, Qataris, and Emiratis all fought for their interests via proxy without ever declaring war. Proxy warfare offers two key advantages: deniability and distance. You arm them, fund them, train them, then let them do the fighting and take the blame. Iran has perfected this art, with Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and militias across both Iraq and Syria. Their drones don't wear uniforms, their missiles don't wave flags, but they still serve Tehran's interests and undermine Iran's enemies. This, more than any uranium stockpile, is what worries Israel and Saudi Arabia. Because if Iran truly wanted a nuke, they wouldn't have signed the Obama nuclear deal, a deal that brought in international observers, surveillance, and major restrictions. Ever since Trump tore up the Obama nuclear deal, Iran's nuclear enrichment has skyrocketed tenfold. So if the US really cared about stopping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, they wouldn't have dismantled the deal that kept enrichment at 3% and prevented the weapon.
The deal requires Iran to give up 97% of its enriched uranium, taking its stockpile from 10,000 kilograms down to just 300 kilograms. That's much less than what's needed to fuel one nuclear weapon.
No, the real issue for Israel and Saudi Arabia was never just the nuke. It was what the deal unlocked: money, billions in sanctions relief.
The US, the European Union, and the United Nations will relieve many energy, economic, and financial sanctions against Iran that have been crippling the country's economy.
Money that could fund Hezbollah, the Houthis, and every militia giving them help. Hillary Clinton herself spelled this out in leaked State Department emails from a decade ago. In 2015, she wrote, "For Israeli leaders, the real threat from a nuclear-armed Iran is not an insane Irani leader launching an unprovoked nuclear attack. What Israeli military leaders really worry about, but cannot talk about, is losing their nuclear monopoly." She goes on, "If Iran reaches the threshold of a nuclear weapon state, Tehran could much more easily call on Hezbollah or Syria to strike Israel, knowing its nuclear weapons would deter Israeli retaliation." In other words, if Iran develops a nuclear weapon, Saudi Arabia is not going to sit there and allow Iran to have one. They're going to get one too.
If they get one, we have to get one.
And the Turks are going to get one as well. And Egypt is going to get one as well. So now Israel goes from having a nuclear monopoly to everyone in the region is on par with them without having F-35s. Sure, but as Iran proves, you don't need F-35s. Our ballistic missiles will strike you directly in Tel Aviv with a nuclear warhead attached. So if Iran gets nuclear weapons and the axis of resistance exists within that context, and Iran and Turkey and Egypt suddenly have nuclear weapons, now Israel's really in danger. Clinton's emails from 2015 are consistent with Trump's present-day goals. According to a source familiar with Trump's secret plan, the purpose of his escalation with Iran is threefold. 1, to prevent Iran from getting a nuke. 2, to prevent Israel from using their nuke. And 3, to prevent Saudi Arabia from feeling the need to get their own nuke.
You only imagine. We've seen the death and
Yeah.
destruction that they're doing through its proxies between Hezbollah, the Assad regime, the Houthis, and what have you. If they had nuclear weapons, the entire Middle East would explode in an arms race.
These strategic concerns are at the root of Trump's escalation, which is why his administration is openly considering using nuclear force to stop it. Now, it's surprising for most people to imagine the willingness to use a nuclear weapon in the modern day. Because when most people hear nuclear weapons, they imagine apocalyptic mushroom clouds, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, radioactive ash sweeping across continents, affecting everyone. But not all nukes are created equally. Enter tactical nuclear weapons. In the late 1950s, the US developed their smallest ever nuke, the W-54 nuclear warhead. Its yield, just 10 tons. Compare that to Little Boy, the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, which had a yield of 15 kilotons. That's 1,500 times more powerful than the W-54. The W-54 was so compact, it could be fired out of artillery. This video you're watching now is actually footage from its live fire test many decades ago. The W-54 was also small enough so that US troops could jump out of a plane with it strapped to their backs. They could land, march, plant it, then detonate it across enemy lines, even if friendly troops were nearby. Now let's fast forward. Today's most advanced tactical nuke is the B-61-12. It's a precision-guided gravity bomb that can be dropped from an F-16, penetrate about 10 feet into the earth, and detonate anywhere from 0.3 kilotons to 50 kilotons. It's built to burrow underground before detonating. The idea isn't to vaporize cities, but to collapse bunkers, destroy fortified facilities, and cripple military infrastructure with seismic shockwaves. This is exactly how Trump could target Iran's deeply buried nuclear facilities, which are nestled beneath hundreds of feet of rock. Conventional non-nuclear bunker busters like the GBU-57 can only reach 200 feet deep, but Iran's bunkers may be buried twice as far. That's where the B-61-12 comes in. One detonation might be enough, but if not, the US has over 480 of them. And remember, when Israel assassinated Hassan Nasrallah, they dropped 50 to 80 bombs on a single underground target. So the question isn't whether the US has the means, it's whether or not they'll use them. And according to these leaked war plans, these bombs are already locked and loaded, just waiting for Trump to give the order. And as we saw from the Mediterranean exercise, they might already be practicing to drop it. According to Klippenstein, the documents he obtained detail a wide spectrum of possibilities. Trump didn't just ask for one war plan, he asked for every scenario. A war where the US fights Iran alone, a war with Israel by its side, or a war where Turkey, Jordan, and the Gulf states are involved as well. Plans that include cyber warfare, covert operations to overthrow the government, economic strangulation, and yes, even nuclear strikes. But at the same time, Trump has offered Iran a way out. He wants them to surrender.
So there's still a chance for diplomacy.
Well, of course. I mean, the president has all options on the table, but we want to be clear.
Okay.
This is the full program. Give it up or there'll be consequences. Full dismantlement. Okay. Iran has to give up its program. It will not and cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapons program. That's enrichment,
to the president's
that
call
is
for
weaponization, and that its strategic missile program.
The message is clear. Back down, negotiate, or be crushed. Iran is already feeling the heat. Years of sanctions have crippled their economy, and the pressure is only increasing. On February 14th, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced a new phase. The US now intends to squeeze Iran's oil exports down to just 1/10 of current levels. That alone could force them to the table. But it's not just sanctions. Iran's regional allies, their true source of strength, is unraveling. Hezbollah has taken a major hit over the last year. And with Bashar al-Assad no longer in power in Syria, it's almost impossible for Iran to rebuild Hezbollah's strength, which removes a very important counterweight over Israel. And now, the US is escalating with the Houthis in Yemen. Their leadership is being targeted, their infrastructure degraded, so Iran has never been more isolated, more vulnerable.
President Trump has decided to hit the Houthis and hit them hard.
One of the things that President Trump is absolutely a master at is leverage. And I would argue, despite your guest from Tehran saying that we are misinterpreting the regional environment, I think we have found in the last year that many elements of power and influence that Iran has wielded have been degraded in great measure. So I do believe, at least from a U.S. perspective, the time is in fact ripe for some sort of consensus between Washington and Tehran.
For Trump and his allies, this is the perfect time to strike. At least That's what they believe. And they might be right. So what happens next? Does Iran stand a chance? Will this backfire on Trump and spiral into a larger war? Are we already witnessing the first moves of World War III? The media might not be covering it, but the documents are out there. The weapons are ready. The warnings have been issued. This isn't a war that's coming. It's a war that has already begun, and no one is talking about it, which is why you need to subscribe to our channel. If you think people need to see this kind of content, share it. As you know, we are heavily shadow banned by YouTube, so help us out by leaving a comment with your thoughts. If you want to see more content like this, please do consider subscribing, and if you're interested in supporting our channel monetarily so we can do this important work, go ahead and visit our website at prop.nco.com. Take care of yourselves. If you're new here, we make video explainers about current events, geopolitics, and propaganda. We also produce podcasts with some of the most intelligent speakers in this space. If you're into this sort of thing, go ahead and like and subscribe. Now, given the nature of our content, we don't receive sponsors, so your support goes a long way. You can also help us with our work by becoming a member on our private website, where you gain exclusive access to documentaries and behind-the-scenes content with our guest speakers.